let's look at some key settings. Accountant settings under the gear icon. The most important settings I think that are to consider, we're going to start with sales settings. All right. Now, I'm going to start right with customizing forms because that is a thing, and then we'll go down the list. Anything I think we need to show in product from the setting, I'll go into another tab to, kind of hammer home the example to confirm it, particularly with pass-through expenses, some of the advanced stuff with class tracking, and then we'll dive into items and then project tracking from there. Customizing forms, just so you know, you can customize invoice, estimate, and sales receipt. In QBO Plus and Essentials, you can have up to 3 custom fields. In QBO Advanced, you can have up to 10, but they're all at the top part of the form. They're not yet at the column level. For Advanced, that's coming. If I just go into my invoice, for example, this is about customizing. Choose the template. I always use Airy Classic. Why? Because any new functionality we put into QBO for forms, we always put into Airy Classic. We haven't really enhanced much with customizing forms in a while, maybe on the mobile app, but that's about it. So you can use whichever one you want, but I always choose Airy Classic, right? And then here, so you name the template, logo edits, of course. If you can have up to like 10 logos now, different colors, a different font, and print settings. Content, you actually click on the pencil on the right. So this is the top part, right? Business name, address, website. What do you want to call the form on the customer facing? Like I could call this pledge, or I could call this something totally different. To me and my staff, it's going to say invoice, but to your client, it might say, whatever you want it to say. And so some will use estimate and they'll change it to contract or bid, for an example, or things like that. Form numbers, custom transaction numbers, if you want. This is just put it on your own numbering system that will increment. But the custom field thing, sometimes you're using class and location for something else, which I will explain a little later. So just know you can have 3 different custom fields, and a lot of times I'll do like a sales rep, and even when you convert from desktop, sales rep from desktop comes over to custom field number 2. QBO Advanced has 7 more custom fields. There's a drop-down list custom field and date range too, or a date clickable custom field. And that's more enterprise type functionality. So for your clients that are needing that, that's in advanced. I'm still waiting for the custom fields to hit the column, the lower part of the form, the target area, where the items are, right? And that's coming with advanced, probably not plus. That's the top part of the form. You click the pencil icon for the target area. This is a target area, right? I'm going to say this terminology now because I want to tee up class tracking in a little bit when we get there. The top part of the form, and we'll get it to an invoice, that's called source or summary. And this is the coding for reporting. The bottom part is target or detail. It's important for when you're running detail reports and you filter by some summary metric and the report goes blank. And then you have the bottom part. Again, click the pencil icon. You can show the account summary if you want or not. Kind of like a statement and invoice in one. And then you choose date, description, product, quantity, rate, SKU. You can move these around if you want it to a different place. And then more activity options. Group activity by, right? Type, day, week, month. Collapse activity rows. Sometimes that's good. If you're doing progress invoicing, you'll have this checked. You could even show a markup on billable expenses if you want. I typically don't show that. And then the billable time, I'm not going to show the employee name. You choose what you want in the target area of the invoice. You can create as many invoice templates as you want. They can have different logos. And then the bottom part is just, discount deposit. If you want the progress invoice estimate summary, that's down there as well. So again, customizing forms, you preview in PDF, that's going to be sales receipt. That's going to be estimate. That's going to be invoice. And again, it's customer facing. Whether you email it or print it, that's what they're going to see and how they're going to see it. Okay? I don't have a layout designer to move around where sales rep would be. The other thing you can do around customizing forms as well is you can import a document, but only with an invoice. You can actually import it just from a Word doc, right? But templates from desktop don't come over here. All right, let's dive back to accountant settings. These are really your edit preferences. I mean, you guys know where this is. It's under the gear icon, operational things. Usage limits to see where you are. Most of your clients are probably under them. If they hit them, they don't need, and they're never going to add any more, they can stay on plus. But if they're going to add more than these caps, they got to consider or move to QuickBooks Online Advanced. Okay, sales. Other things to consider, invoice terms I just mentioned. We don't yet have a way, we're working on this, like finance charges. So we're working on that. We also don't have a way that if you pay me 5 days before it's due, it's 10% off. You know, it just doesn't work like that would in desktop. So if you're wondering why it didn't work, that's why. For the custom fields, you can choose what's internal, what's public. Sales reps just for me, right? Your own transaction numbering, service date, that works on some detail reports, discount deposit, and tips is for a sales receipt, right? But you could have a sales receipt with a tip field on there, okay? Still, you and I both know that QBO is not going to really be for like point of sale or a restaurant, right? You would have to throw on a third party that could handle that, you know, unless it's a really slow kind of cafe or something. Now, products and services, park here for a little bit, and then we'll get into more of the project tracking thing and expenses and more of the advanced settings. This is inventory, right? So we're going to look at that. So you're going to check that box off. The other, and definitely turn on price rules. So we're going to look at price rules and items overview right now. One other page I got to show because it's related to items, but still, that's where you turn on inventory. If you don't need it, turn it off, okay? And only Plus and Advanced support the first in, first out valuation inventory that we'd have in QuickBooks Online. Right here, this also impacts items. This is also Plus and Advanced only. Essentials will not have that. Right? My favorite thing about Plus is two-sided items, the ability to put an item on expense forms. We're used to seeing on a bill, check, credit card expense, and I'll show this in product now, where you have account details, right? Or categories. I think we changed the name recently. You can also have item details. So for you guys said 50% of you product-based businesses are what you support. You'll have people that buy items and resell them. Right? So they want two-sided items. That's QBO Plus in Advanced. However, if you want to purchase the items, you have to put them on the purchase form. So you would check that box. And then this track expenses and items by customer or project or billable. This is just pass-through time material expense or profitability by project, right? So I usually check those two. But this is the other item-related one that's important. We'll come back here. I'm going to right-click, and we're going to go to the items list. I usually go there from gear icon, products and services, but it's also under sales, products and services, either way. Now, right away, you're seeing this is our items list. We just, in QBO, happen to call it products and services. But you're seeing low and out of stock, right? So we do track a reorder point. Right? That is in QBO Plus and Advanced. It only focuses with inventory parts, which we'll get to. Now, a couple things to consider. Categories. When you have your items list with QBO, do set up product categories. It's like main item and sub-item, right? And if you convert from desktop, you're going to have a prompt if you want to change from the main item, sub-item hierarchy to a more product categories. So I have product categories, right? And I'm going to assign all my items to them. And what that does for me, it's really about just like reporting or when you're searching for something on a sales form or something, which I'll show you, or just the item list itself, right? I can filter by a particular category that we can look at. Let's just say we're looking at appliances, but also just visually. I mean, I have 100 items. Your clients might have thousands of items, right? So it's going to be better to have a category, to have the items within the category, just easier visually, right? Now, one theme I want to tell you, and I'm going to make this window a little smaller, just is this little gear icon. On any list or report or something like that, this is settings. This would allow me to choose what columns do I want on the items list or the report or any kind of list, right? So I just leave income expense account type. It's up to you. You might use SKU for something else, right? Make it compact or group by category, right? So that's there. Print, Excel, right? So that's there. Now I'm going to filter first by appliances, two-sided items, right? And why it matters. You have SKU, you have the category, you can even assign a default class to this. But two-sided items, as we know, are double-sided in desktop. I have the revenue part, sales, and then I have hitting cost of goods sold. And I can show the cost and the sales price. That's the whole point. You can even assign a preferred vendor if you're creating a purchase order from this list. Back to sales tax, but remember you can also, for the new automated sales tax we have, you can actually assign a particular sales tax category or what you sell. which could impact, when you're selling on a sales receipt or invoice, the sales tax. We'll look at that a little later today, but I wanted to point those out, and we'll get to price rules soon. I know there's a lot to cover, to consider here for your clients. And they're probably not going to need it all, but hopefully you can pick out a few things, where you turn them on, how they work, so you know that QBO is going to be a viable platform for them. It's kind of the point of today. Yes, you can assign a picture to all your items, even non-inventory. But the nice thing about two-sided items, and I'm going to do one more window. Let's say you're doing a credit card expense, purchasing. For this credit card, American Express, and we'll say it was Amazon or something. There you go. Remember, items detail. Why are we seeing that on this expense form? Typically, I only see it on an invoice or sales receipt. Because of that setting, right? This setting right here. Show items table on expense and purchase forms. I can go ahead and buy the appliance. Just really simple to show several birds here with one thing. Say it's like 5 of them. Now, with the other settings too, look, you can tag a customer. I can make it billable if I want to pass it through. Billable's not required. It's only if you're passing something through to an invoice, time, material, or expense. Right? We'll go over that a little later when we're talking about project tracking. But a lot of times you just did an estimate, right, with your client or customer, or your clients are just doing estimates in QBO, so they're just going to invoice against it till it's closed, and they just want to tag the cost to the job or project in order to see it on a P&L or in the project center, which we'll look at after items. My point is you're going to have an items details because of that setting on a bill check, credit card expense. You can purchase things and then resell them. This is the cost of goods sold amount, right? $200 each, and I sell it for like $500 a piece, right? That's what I mean by two-sided items. It's on an expense. It's also on an invoice or sales receipt. Let's talk about inventory, and I can just filter by inventory type, and these are all my inventory types, or I can look at my low stock or out of stock if I want. Let's just go into this particular item, this wood door. Now, an inventory part is a three-sided item. What I mean by that, even though this window looks just like the other one, it hits inventory asset. So it's either going to increment that or decrement it, depending whether I purchase it or sell it. Revenue, when I sell it, I should be crediting revenue. And cost of goods sold should be debited when you sell it. Right, inventory is different. So two-sided items, you can debit COGS when you purchase it. Inventory items, you're going to debit COGS when it's sold. And that's an important distinction to know. It's same with desktop. Even though desktop is average cost valuation, the debit to COGS is when you sell it to. Okay, but other fields are fine. You can have price rules, and we'll go over that soon because that's important. But yeah, inventory item. Now, inventory items, I can look at like all my low stock items. You can make a quantity adjustment or a starting value adjustment on the fly. I'd rather use the forms. Like I'd rather purchase it and then sell it on the forms. But sometimes you make an adjustment. And I'd done this last night to put one under stock just to can it for you today so you could see, out of stock. So you can make a quantity adjustment or a starting value adjustment. And the starting value adjustment is really just a periodic value adjustment. Let me see if I can do it on this one. Sometimes you can't, depending on the item, you can't always make a value adjustment. You're just offsetting it, not to opening balance equity. Hopefully not, right? But you'll choose a COGS account or something. And it's just the initial cost Woody put in at 105 is actually wrong as 125. Then you can backdate this value adjustment, which will update, your valuation reporting. Right? So it's more of a correction. It's not meant to be done all the time, just like periodically. And I would argue same with quantity adjustments. But sometimes stuff breaks, right? It's ruined on the cargo ship or what have you, so you can adjust your quantity on hand as opposed to using a form. But either way, it'll show up as an inventory adjustment. Yeah, see, these two I made on the 8th yesterday, they're just inventory adjustments. I just offset them to, some shrinkage account, just COGS account. It shows up in reports, valuation reports, and quick reports on these items as well. Now, I'm going to go ahead and look at these. We'll purchase them. They're all from the same vendor. And see, doors. Let me see. They're all from the same vendor. Now, when you hover over on purchase forms or sales forms, it'll show what you have on hand, give you a low or out reorder point, and then what's the quantity on the current purchase order. So for these, I need 100, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in 110. It just allows me to make some decisions. I have 15, one on purchase order, so I'll just bring in 5. And that's my purchase order. Right? This is non-posting, but it can go to the vendor. Now let's go to a bill. Typically it could be a check though. Probably not a bill because this is Perry Windows and Doors. They're local, so I'm just going to do another credit card expense, right? So let me right-click, duplicate the tab I'm on. It's going to bring me to another tab. Let's do an expense, because whether it's a bill, a credit card expense, or whatever, when you put in the vendor name, right, the drawer on the right is going to kick out. The right-hand panel, very important. It's important on the expense side and the cost side of the business, or I should say the transaction entry in QBO, but it's also important on the revenue side too, on invoices, to pick up unbilled time, expense, or estimates. So make a mental note of the panel, the right-hand panel, because you'll train your clients on this. I'm just going to add all purchase orders to it because it's been a while, and now this is an expense. Now for the, actually, let me unlink. You can remove all links by clicking the little blue thing. Let's just do the one we did today because I want to show you this one thing you can do. You might not know. Let's say we're only bringing in 50, right? That's the expense. Go back to the link transaction, take it back to the original PO. The top line for the wood door, that's closed. They're going to send me all 5. I received all 5. The oak though, I received 50, so I'm still anticipating another 60 on purchase order, right? So we do partial receiving. All right, now to close off, to tie off inventory completely, let me go ahead and do a sales receipt. Customer came, they're going to buy the wood there, wood door, and buy 3 of them. Tells me what I have, right? And then the amount, we'll say, $150 a piece. So I have, the rate, $150. Yeah, I'm overriding that. Oh, where are you? Come on. Why it's doing that? It's kind of locking me in. So I have 150. Click save. This is an inventory part. On any save transaction that you have in the product, look down below in the dark gray area. Print preview, make recurring. Right, we'll go over recurring transactions a little later. Customize, more. Under the More tab, go to the Transaction Journal. This is where you can see the debits, credits behind the transaction. Checking was debited. We'll talk about undeposited funds later. Income was credited. COGS, debited. Inventory asset, debited. So I didn't have COGS on that one. Sorry, I used a poor item for this example. But still, you can see the Control Y report or the debit credit report behind this at any time. Any saved transaction. It's inventory. Keep in mind that there isn't a unit of measure. There's not sales order fulfillment or workflow or anything like that. You're just purchasing, you're selling. It's first in, first out. COGS gets debited, when you sell it. It's a 3-sided item, but you'll always have these, other types of items, whether it's service or non-inventory, and those can be 2-sided items. The other thing I wanted to show regarding product, and then we'll look a little bit at invoicing, and then we'll go into project tracking, then automation and data entry, sales tax, the mobile app. Right, so we got about 45 minutes left. Price rules. This was a setting. Remember, it's a sales setting. Now, it's a lot like price levels for those of you used to QuickBooks Pro or the desktop, but it does have a date range. So we're going to use this beyond the basic rule, and I'm going to change it for more recent. We'll do a date range because I want it to turn off at an appropriate time. So it's going to be 5, I think it's 05, 09, 19. For all customers or specific customers or customer types, even if your client doesn't want to use price rules, which is basically my ability to create a custom price per item or do a percentage or a fixed amount with rounding or not to all, products and services or all inventory or just, a particular category. Hey, we're going to have a discount this weekend on a particular category of items we sell. Come on in. And I want it to automatically show on the sales receipt or invoice, right? Before I click apply, because there's just 2 of these items, and we're just looking at appliances, it's going to be half off from $500 to $250. So yeah, we'll just hit apply. But I wanted to mention something. Customer types. Even if your client has no desire at all to use price rules, turn it on, because there is an ability in the customer list. Sales customers. It opens up this customer type functionality. So you can create a list of customer types and it's just a list element, right? Or I should say a sublist element, just put in a new type to track all your customer base, if you will, or you want to segment them on a report or see which segment is more profitable. So some people that I've been showing this to, they don't use price rules. It doesn't matter because their prices are pretty fixed, but they turn it on just to get the customer type functionality. It used to be a big request in QBO. It's always been in desktop. What this allows me to do is at the customer level, in the record itself, under additional info, I have a type. So my A customer is just, customer type is residential. And I have others that are commercial. And the only reason why this matters is, we're going to look at reporting real quick. You have a standard report under sales and customers called sales by customer type detail. See, this allows me to use class and location for something else, right? Here's my total for non-residential, for commercial. Now I have a lot of them, not specified, which just means that these customers, I have not assigned a customer type to. But once I did, then I would have this big detail report where I could see, where my total sales by customer type, right? Because it groups that way. Anyway, another way, just a tip to segment the customer base. Even if you don't use price rules, by all means, turn it on just for the type. If I do go to an invoice, I think we have that rule in play. Close the drawer for now. See the drawer coming back? I'll just hang here for a sec. Just to remind you on this one, the ability to, on both the expense and the revenue side, this panel is going to open up to remind you or really your clients that they might want to add things to the invoice. Estimates will show up here, delay charges, time, expense. We'll go over that with project tracking. But so when I look at the appliance item, yeah, see? So in the rate column, you have the default sales rate and whatever your price rule is. And in the item record, which I showed you, we'll go back to there, back to products and services. When you do edit an item, I have what rules has it been a part of, Well, it's a way to get into rules, but it would show me if it was attached to something, I'd see a list of the rules, right? So that I know it's been part of a particular rule. But the nice thing about the price rules too, if your client is going to use them, they automatically shut off on the end of the date, right? The end date shuts it off. So they don't forget, and then they're losing profitability. So, well, that's basically products and services. Yes, there are a range of reports to consider around items, just to show you. Under sales and customers, where you have your inventory valuation detail or summary report. This will show the FIFO cost, quantity on hand, asset value, and all your items. Let's see if we did this week. Should be able to see some movement here. Yeah. It shows an inventory adjustments, expense, sales receipts, invoices. All the transactional detail against that. And you have the inventory summary report. You also have sales by products and service detail. It's another good report, right? Showed you customer type. If you're doing sales by customer detail report, which is oft used, product services there too. And you could group it by product service if you wanted to. I know it's designed to look at like broken up by customers, but still it's there. So those are some key item reports. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the profit and loss in general, you can filter when you customize by product and service. So really it's, item profitability. And if we look at this, because we were talking about categories to start with items, you'll see that it's the category colon in the actual item name itself, whether it's a service item, non-inventory part, inventory, what have you. I could do profitability for all my advanced cert work, look at profitability for all appliance category, all cabinets, would show profitability across all, if we look at products and services, all profitability by item, right? Because there's no item profitability report per se, but you'll just go to the P&L and you'll filter for products and service or the category that all the items are part of. Hopefully that makes sense. So item profitability, those are the main item-based reports that I've heard of or you consider. Okay, back to settings. Progress invoicing we'll get to, but that is supported. Progress invoicing is actually supported in Simple Start Essentials and Plus, but again, for service-based businesses or even product-based, particularly if you're reselling items, you've got to have Plus at least. Right? Plus is fine. Or Advanced if you need Advanced, and now you know why one would need Advanced, but most of your clients, like I said, they're going to be on Plus. So products and services, good. Progress invoicing, fine. Online delivery, this would be for the invoicing. We should go look there before we look at project tracking. Those are the main settings there. We've gone over through the expense settings. We're good here because you need these for the job costing piece, particularly profitability by project and ability to pass through time material expense. Okay. Purchase orders, advanced. Now we would have gone over some of these in the accountant best practice webinar in the client file, close books and that stuff. We'll quickly do something on class tracking because some of you probably weren't at the webinar on Tuesday or last week. We got over class tracking. So I'll come back to class tracking. We're going to do that, then invoicing, then do project tracking. But I wanted to mention automation, right? I usually leave these 4 checkboxes. They'll be in Essentials and Plus and QBO Advanced. Automating data entry. One of the ways to do it within QBO. The other way is through bank feeds. The third way is through recurring transactions. Pre-fill forms of previously entered content. Yes, that's good for if you have a vendor and when you put them on the check, it'll bring over what was there before. But it's for all names. Okay, so just know you'd see it with customers, you'd also see it with employees. Automatically apply credits and bill payments, I usually leave off because this will go to the next customer invoice in line if I have a credit memo, right? And this would go to the next bill in line if I have a vendor credit. I might want more control of that. What vendor credit goes to what bill, etc. So I leave it off until, it is going to be a viable option for the client or they're asking for that. This one is one to consider since we're kind of going to go into invoicing here and the ins and outs of that. Customer invoicing, I mean. Automatically invoice unbilled activity. Every Wednesday, QBO will create invoices against any unbilled activity. Now remember, I had this customer, I think it was A. You create an invoice. There's other ways to see this. I'll show you. The panel opens, right? I have billable expense, time that I can just bring in, like add them all. This is me passing it through. But I'm doing this by clicking on add all, right? And then I'm creating the invoice. That's how you pass through. Pretty easy, but I'll show it again on a time entry or something in case you had a customer call and you missed it. We had turned on some settings. We did some expense and tagging a project, checking the billable box. We'll do it on time. I just created an invoice against that unbilled activity, right? But I can also automate that. Let me unpin the tab. There we go. Right. So every Wednesday, any unbilled activity I have in the product, like in my QBO file, QBO will create invoices regardless of customer. Just create a bunch of invoices. You'll just see them there. In the audit log, the user who creates those is system admin. Right. So you'll know system admin is either bank feed or recurring transactions or this automation setting. But I know what you're thinking. Yes, maybe for a couple of my clients this would work, but really my clients need more control. They just don't want like 100 invoices created because they want to pick and choose what goes on the invoice. So I also leave this off. Let's think of a scenario. Invoicing against time or delayed charge or material expense, right? As we kind of get into invoicing and then we'll dive into project tracking and we'll probably end with automation and then hopefully the mobile app. And I will try to dive into sales tax as well. Single time activity, customer project. I'm going to do one specifically I have for today. We'll get to that, but I just wanted to show you something. The service that they're working on, say it was, I don't have that. Oh, what was it? Framing, right, of course, different file. Billable. You're going to see billable on the time entry. We'll say they worked, 4 hours. This is, QBO is going to assume that I want to invoice against the time. Essentials does this too. Okay, so let's go ahead and save and close. So now you can do this on a weekly timesheet too. A bill, we haven't done a bill yet, or it could be a check. Either way, we'll say it was this third party that I typically leverage for things, and I'm just going to do a category. We'll say they did some cost of goods sold, amount 250, project, we'll do the A project here. Let's keep with, it's fine. And then I'm going to make it billable. Again, I'm assuming to pass it through. So that global setting, it would create invoices against every Wednesday, whatever I had. You also see this in the sales window, unbilled activity, right? This is unbilled activity has not yet been invoiced yet, right? You can create invoices against it. There's even a report that you'll find who owes you. I know we put it in the AR section, but still uninvoiced charges or uninvoiced time. And this just lets me know what expense or delayed charges are against a particular project or customer that I still have to invoice for. And there's also an uninvoiced time report. So you can track that as well. When you go, we'll go back here and just nail off the drawer thing on this side. I can automate it or I can add it this way from the panel. Panel opens, there's my expense, add. You might also have a delayed charge form. I don't want to forget this because some of you will have clients that they're not ready to invoice their customers yet or their clients, but they are going to do some work and just kind of book it in and leave it non-posting before they send it to an invoice. The delayed charge form is for that. So I did, for this particular customer, we did some flooring or something. I just want to make sure that it's there for me to invoice later, that it doesn't get forgotten. And again, if I was to create an invoice, you'd see it in the panel. Don't have to show you that again, but still, it's important. Now, I showed you how globally you can set this, and it just automatically will create invoices every Wednesday or once a month or whatever you want to do for any customer. But if you want to have more control, well, that's a recurring transaction. We're touching a little bit on the automation of data entry, QBO. This is one of the ways. I showed you the global setting for invoicing. Bank rules is another one we'll look at later after project tracking and invoicing, but recurring transactions. You can create a recurring transaction for almost anything. Bills, checks, journal entries. I mean, you do this right now, probably for journal entries, prepaid expenses and stuff, right? Sales receipts. You just can't create a recurring transaction for receipt payment, a bill payment, or a paycheck. But if I was going to do this invoice for this customer, monthly invoice, because I don't want it to be global and choose the customer, what you can do, automatically send the invoice to them to pay, automatically include unbilled charges, right? So, I might have an item here that I bill them monthly on, but this invoice, when it's entered, it'll also pick up anywhere in the product that I have tagged this customer to on the expense side or the time side or material cost, and it'll add it to the invoice. So this is a way to set up a auto invoicing using a recurring invoice and checking off the include unbilled charges box. This will work great for a law firm for time, right? And even Essentials would be able to do this one. Okay, so sometimes law firms don't need all the stuff they need with Plus, but still. Okay, just want to make sure we knew recurring charges, one way to automate. Probably don't have to cover more. If you have questions, ask, but that is that one. Now, and remember those reports and where else to see, even on the customer list, unbilled activity. But remember the delayed charge form, that'll even be picked up on the invoice too in the right-hand panel. So you can do this manually. I'm just thinking of like more automation with the global setting or the recurring settings there. Okay, I'm going to switch QBOAs because I want to show one other thing that I think is even beyond like auto invoicing. If you turn, and this is something for you to consider as well in the Your Books file, if you turn on QuickBooks Payments, it's free. It's just a setting, right? It's in here. It's a setting. I'm not going to show you because this is Sean's live file and stuff, but it's just a payment setting, right? You sign up for like a merchant account. Getting paid by your clients via ACH is also free. Credit card has charges, but the rest is free. So with recurring transactions, what I can do is I can create a recurring sales receipt because you might not want to deal with accounts receivable and invoicing. Create a sales receipt, call it, monthly, client fees. You can do this yourself. That's why I'm calling it client fees, but it could be for anything, subscription billing or whatever your clients might offer as monthly services. They should set up recurring sales receipts for every client. This is how we bill you. We just pull it out of your checking account. You might have turned it off or hidden it. It's kind of tough when you have like a live file and stuff, but I'm used to seeing it on the right where you have some options. Let me see. We'll try it. So here, there's their email. I'm going to automatically send the email when I choose like ACH. There it is. Yeah, it's already there. Enter bank info. So I can put in Sean's account and routing, checking the name of the institution, and I can even read an authorization, send this to him. He would fill it out check off the term of the billing that's acceptable for him of the 3 options I give, and then put in his info, phone number, account number, right? Checking, etc. And then what I'll do is I'll get this back, because with QBOA and QBO is a file share, right? So he just uploads it back to me. And the PDF or whatever, I just attach it to his client record as a doc attach in your books. Then I have PCI compliance on my end, right? I'm reading the script. He has this signed. And what this allows me to do is whenever on the first of the month, he's going to get a sales receipt. And a couple days later, I'm going to get whatever the service is here and the amount into my checking account from his. It's just ACH from the customer. So that's, moving beyond accounts receivable. Invoicing is one thing. I think invoicing is still very viable, but where firms are going and where clients are trying to go is just this kind of automate getting paid. And that's through a recurring sales receipt with QuickBooks payments. And you can do that yourself, meaning the accountants here listening today or watching today, you can literally set up recurring sales receipts for all your clients using the Your Books file in QBOA, turn on QB payments, enter in my bank and routing info, and then you just pull whatever it is you charge and you roll in the QBO fee. That's what a lot of the leading firms or firm of the future type firms really adopting the platform as a whole, meaning QBOA and QBO, are trying to do. And just get away from collecting money. In other words, get away from accounts receivable. It's going to work with all your clients now, but consider it, right? It's not AR, it's a sales receipt, right? Undeposited funds. All right, there's a lot to cover. So maybe this is an hour and a half webinar, or I can cut some stuff out. We'll see. Kind of reinventing it. So in the survey at the end, please leave the feedback on, you'll see the questions and stuff. And there's some open-ended questions so you can write whatever you want. What we'd rather see. To help me tweak it, into like 75 minutes. What's most impactful? So before we go to project tracking, I want to show something key around invoicing, right? You probably all saw this new overview page within sales, right? Just some options here and shortcuts to a new invoice or recurring invoice. A new sale, it's like, what is that? It's just like a point of sale-ish type thing, kind of an abbreviated sales receipt. All sales, you have, let me go into the other file. I have data. I have all sales, right? Unbilled activity, we'll get into estimates, we'll get into project tracking soon, things like that. But invoicing, this window, not a whole really filterable. I think we're going to enhance it, but it tells me, what's overdue, what's not due yet, what's not deposited, which is helpful, and what's been deposited. And then you can open up these sections, right? It's partially paid yesterday. Right, so against the total amount, the payment was 50, basically owe me $1,000, right? So I can see that within the invoicing tab itself, and I can see when something was viewed. If you're sending it in an online fashion, or you send the link, if they viewed it, and they're on the phone saying, yeah, I never got it, you're like, well, it shows you viewed it yesterday. So this is like a little flow of when it's sent, viewed, paid, deposited. Right within the invoices tab. I think it's helpful. I'm looking for more filterable options, but you go down and you can see all this stuff, right? And then I can see what was deposited. I did a bunch of depositing yesterday, but you can still look at the story, right? What happened? Deposited October 18. Anyway, the other thing you can do from here is you can batch send, print, or send reminders. Okay, so just know that. You can batch send from here, assuming your customer has an email address, and it'll just do it. You don't have to go to the invoice and resend. So you can do it from the invoicing section, right? Customers, we talked about, product services, the all sales view as well. Most of these are going to have a money bar to know what you have open, right? Do consider payments. I think it's really helpful to get paid faster, and hopefully the sales receipt thing was important. For a long time, to give you the history of the story, we would do sub-customers, right, to do job costing. And you couldn't do labor burden. I couldn't show the cost of the time to the business because time is non-posting. So in desktop, I can put it on a paycheck and then tag the job, and then I have it on my P&L and other kind of contractor type or job cost type reports. But in QBO, it just wasn't a thing. It just wasn't there. And there's still no customer or project field on a paycheck in QBO, right? So you do a $0 check or $0 journal entry just to book the expense or the COGS to the particular job. And you'd use a sub-customer, right? You'd have the customer, you'd call it, this is job, 05, 09, 19, whatever your job code is. It's a sub-customer of, a particular Christie bill with parent, right? And it would just show up as a customer : job, just kind of like desktop. It was a workaround, right? And I used this for years. Have a great video on it. I would set up budgets by job or sub-customer really, and I'd have my budget to actual. It's how I got my estimate to actual report. I would just use Stacy Kildall's trick, So we would do that for years with clients that wanted to be on QBO to be mobile, but needed estimate to actual reporting and things like that. But payroll, labor burden, I still had to do a $0 journal entry, $0 check. So projects is different. We've added projects, which is a setting. I'll come back to this. Duplicate the tab. Probably the last setting we'll go through today. Accountant settings. Sorry, help. Go away. There we go. It's an advanced, right? Plus and QBO advanced only, right? Project tracking. Right here. Let's turn it on. It's like sub-customer, but better, and I'll show you why. All right? Now, I'm sorry, I probably won't be able to spend much on class tracking today. Just so you know, there is a good deep dive video. Well, good, you'll have to let me know. Source versus target and balance sheet by class. Right? This particular video, I do suggest watching if you're really doing a lot of, say, reporting in QBO. Operational reporting, and you want to use class and location, right? On that video page, I just put it in the chat room. Watch that particular video. 9 minutes long. Just goes through why you can't get a balance sheet by class, but of course, profit and loss by class. What's the difference between class and location tracking? What's source versus target in QBO? Why does it matter to me? And I think it'll help you understand reporting. It's an advanced certified QBO concept. But, and that's how I learned it, literally from Laura Redmond, right? I just regurgitated in the video after I finally absorbed it. So we won't really be going on class location tracking. I don't use class for job costing. I save it for something else, some other higher level departmentalization or profit centering. I know it's mostly about the P&L, but sometimes you need a balance sheet by class. I use location. So that's plus and advanced. Watch the video. We won't really be focusing on today. But if that's something you want in this beyond the basics, let me know. I'll take something else out. Project tracking. Okay. Turn it on. Got the other things considered, right? Projects. This is what projects offers. A project center with a profit margin, time against, and actions. And you can go into each project. I actually created one for today. But literally, if I just go into the framing flooring, the Robert Allard, now this is customer : job. That's all it is. A project is just a sub-list element. You name the project, you choose the customer, you put in your notes. The only real difference, there's a heck of a lot more functionality now with projects and sub-customers. And you're going to want it for the labor burden, okay? But the main difference is that a sub-customer has just more fields of data that I can populate, whereas projects, I just have the name and notes. But the functionality I'm about to show you, and I saved this kind of for the end, this and the automation of the bank feed, because they're, I think, two of the more important things. So we'll nail those in like 10 minutes. So frame and flooring, if I go in here, I can see my 82.1% profit margin. I can see I have over 27K of income. So far, almost 5K of costs, including payroll at the job level. Now, that's not a paycheck with a project field, right? And I'll show you how I got that. But I can also see my transactions. I know you see a paycheck here, but that's in the back end. There's still no customer job field or project field on a paycheck in QBO. But I have the estimate, which is the beginning contract, right? Expenses, I've invoiced against it a couple times because you progress invoice, bunch of time activity. I can see all the time activity against it. This flows through to payroll, even though there's no field in the back end, it would still assign it to the project. That's why I see it on the P&L by project report. And then I have project reports. Most importantly, time cost by employee or vendor. I can see the cost of the time against this project. Robert Allard's framing and flooring gig from December 26, 18. That's the last example I have. I can see the duration of Elizabeth, who's my main, sub-C or employee really. I think she's an actual employee. Cost rate and the cost to me. Total cost $21,22.40. That's not even on payroll. Even if it's not on payroll and you're not using payroll in QBO, I can still see the estimated cost of time against the project using QBO Plus and Advanced now with project tracking. And for vendors. How? Okay, well, I'm glad you asked. And there's also a 14-minute video on this on that same site. It's just called project tracking. Go back to the main screen, this hourly cost rate, right? Whether you're using payroll or not, I mean, I think it's good for when you're not using payroll in QBO. But notice Leah, right? Her hourly cost rate to me for whatever project she works on is $21.15 an hour. You know, you put in your wage amount, employer taxes, and you can put in some overhead. Now, yes, this will probably be different than what I pay Leah on the paycheck because paychecks don't include overhead. That it's more of an estimated cost to the business against the hours against that project. But at least I have visibility on a report and in payroll expense on when the payroll's run to make decisions. Before, I was totally in the dark of cost of time. Totally. Now, in desktop, you're also totally in the dark on cost of time, unless you use an enterprise. Premier Contractor cannot show you the cost of time until you put it on a paycheck. Now, granted, those job fields are there, but still, QBO has an advantage because I can put in kind of I can prognosticate what the cost will be of the time before it goes to payroll. And it probably will be different, just so you know, because paychecks don't include overhead. You put in the hourly cost rate for all of your employees. Now, what about your vendors? I'm glad you asked that one. Because in the vendor record itself, and let's say Michael here, he's a handyman, there is a cost rate per hour. So it would flow against the time entry also. So there's a way to do that. Let's go back to projects. We'll drill into the one I had for today. I have 60% margin, but I haven't really invoiced everything. I did do some invoicing yesterday, so I have some construction income, and then I have some job expenses, right? Time activity against I have from Elizabeth from yesterday, right? The 4 hours and like 93.20. Let's do another time entry for her, just real quick against this. Regular pay, project's going to be BTB. Not making it billable. Why? Not passing it through. Doesn't have to be billable. Sadly, it does default to that billable checkbox, right? I wish it didn't because billable is just an optional thing. And I'm just about project profitability here, and I'm going to invoice against the estimate. I don't care about passing it through. But I use billable as like a quote-unquote change order sometimes. Like I'll tag some costs on the side. I'll make a billable just so it gets picked up in the final invoice. It's like a workaround. Tip. And we'll say she did some flooring, right? Because I think that was on the original estimate, 4 hours, save and close. Now, I'm going to run payroll for Elizabeth, okay? Just a quick payroll. And I know I probably have already run payroll. It's not till June 3rd, but just for today, okay? I'm going to create another paycheck for Elizabeth, all right? Notice 12 hours, right? Just for her. I'm going to click Preview Payroll, 6782. Notice on the paycheck, there's no job field. That'll be a lot better when we have that visibility one day. I'm hoping for it. But the 6782, right? I'm going to submit payroll just for Elizabeth there. Now, click Finish Payroll. Yeah, I'll do it later. Now, back on projects here for the BTB, 62%, I now see some payroll expense, see? Now, again, it's different from probably what the project report, that time cost by employee, because that's just a ballpark. So it's going to be different because there's no overhead and other things on the paycheck. But still, I can see the actual cost assigned to that particular job. And once I run payroll, I'll see the cost there. Right now, we're at a 41% profit margin. Back to transactions. The original document, the estimate, the contract, create invoice. You can progress invoice, right? So I'll do another 25%. It's going to create an invoice. Right? I have some billable time and expense. This would be change order type stuff, but I'm going to add it later. This is just invoicing against the estimate. And it'll show them 25% due of these phases of the job. And it figures out the quantity for you. So progress invoicing is very alive and well within QBO Plus and Essentials. I mean, in the other SKUs too, progress invoicing, but you're going to be doing it in here because of the project activity, the ability to run better reporting, payroll labor burden, estimated time, cost against the project, and two-sided items, on and on and on. You really need Plus for real, just service-based work, I think, whether you're doing contractor, architect, engineer, accountant, consulting. You can do this in the Your Books file. tracking the profitability of each client, because the work projects become projects in the Your Books file. And then here's my P&L by this job, doing pretty good, net income. So I think that's a big change, and why I think QBO Plus really matches Pro at this time. Finally, automating data entry, and we'll look at sales tax quick. If you guys are okay with going over like 5 or 10 minutes, I'll show the sales tax last. I want to show the mobility piece just so you know, but that doesn't take very long. But the bank feed, we have webinars on banking and bank feed and reconciliation, so I won't take up that. Valerie does an awesome job. You can go watch that. And we have recordings on that site I put in the chat area. But the big thing is the rule, the actual rules. You have the ability on a rule when you create one, and we use bank rules to make sure that the transaction coming down from the bank or credit card is going to the right payee, the right category, class, location, the split, whatever. There's another piece of this at the very bottom. It's a small check box that says automatically add to my books. Transaction in the feed is Google, and the bank feed sees it as that. It's going to create a credit card expense or a debit card expense, whatever. Comes in monthly usually. And once the rule is applied, it's put in the register immediately. And when you go to that transaction, you can see that it was automatically added. That's the mode. So transaction feed comes in from the bank or the credit card that does not need to be reviewed or quote unquote approved. You can just have it automatically added to the books once the rule's applied. And that's more real, truer automation of data entry for banking. It just skips the whole for review tab. You don't have to review it. It goes right into the register. And there's always breadcrumbs with this stuff. Interesting. Receipts in beta. I got to find out what this is. It's the first time I've seen it. Interesting. So I don't know if you guys have a third tab, but I do now. I'll go figure that out a little later today. So automation. Now, real quick, let me dive into this one. Yes, sales tax. It's automated. Then we'll look at the mobile app. In accountant settings, if you go to advanced, right here, if you have like cash basis sales tax, change this to cash. I leave it as accrual, but the new sales tax, like the automation module, now supports accrual and cash. Before it was just accrual. So that's that setting for that. Now, go into taxes. This is where you go view and pay, things like that. But it is automated at the transaction level by your sales tax settings. So here's where you can go and add. You can turn it off. I can't go back to the old sales tax module, but most new QBOs have a new sales tax module, and I think you can opt into it. But when you add an agency, all you're doing is you're not actually creating the sales tax items anymore. You're just choosing the particular agency, like Baldwin County of Alabama, the filing frequency, and then the start date, That's all you're doing. Then, based on the address of the customer, so I have like a Colorado one for Natasha. Natasha I usually use as an example. Go to sales receipt. Her address, I sell that appliance thing that I keep talking about. Say that there's 8 of them she buys. Notice sales tax, it's black, it's black, it's black, and eventually it's going to move to blue. And it figures it out without having to add some items or choose an amount, right? Or a percent, I should say. And this will tell me, based on the shipping address or ship to, and then the Colorado Department of Revenue percentages, the total tax standard rate, 4.985%. This is kind of like a sales tax group item, if you will. But I'm not creating it. It's already there. And then remember, I showed you in the items like an hour ago, but in the item record, you can choose the tax categories. So that's where it comes into play. You can override the amount, of course. And for sales tax, the automation, sometimes you have to automate it on the actual sales receipt, but also when you go to pay it. And when you view pay, there's an ability to also make an adjustment. People ask, so where's the sales tax adjustment? So that's when I go view the return for, let's say, was it Colorado? This is where you go pay it. It's collecting it for the period. You can add an adjustment here. Reason, account, amount. And you select your filing method. So manual, or you can do e-file, depending. This is your payment. So you'll see this in some of your clients, maybe most of them, or maybe you guys have the older sales tax, right? But The new sales tax is just going to be on or not, and that's really what it does on a sales form is it's going to calculate it for you based on that. But when you click on the blue link, it'll tell you how it calculated it, right? You can make sales tax adjustments when you pay it, and you can overwrite it on the invoice or sales receipt. Mobility, one of the main tenets of QBO. One of the cool things, though, about it. So you have your dashboard activity would be different transactions. I can do bank feeds here, right, and just swipe and add to the register. There's that, too. Your clients all have two things in common, right? Checking and credit card accounts, and they have a phone. So the mobility really makes sense. I can see my products and services list, customers and projects, vendors. I can see chart of accounts, but I can't add any. That's good for you. Like I said, bank feeds. And then there are 6 supported transaction types: expense estimates, invoices, invoice payments, sales receipts, deposits. And there's 2 reports, P&L and balance sheet, right? They're just in stasis, though, like I can't drill down. Now, an expense, they will like this one. I just had a Eat Right for Life meal here at work. I know. Credit card, Amex, who did I pay? We'll just say it was Jenny's Cafe Shop. What kind of expense is it? And this would be meals. So you can search all category. Meals local. Now, I can take a picture of the receipt, right? Let's see if it's any better now. Use this photo, and I'm going to save it. Among other things, this is just an expense. They could be out at Lowe's, Home Depot, buying something. You know, I can even tag it for a job, like who was it for, make it billable, pass through. Because I know people in desktop, they come home with receipts. They're not putting that into the file at night. They're not. So this allows me to do it on the fly. And then in the file, I have this, go back to this file. This expense, Jenny's Cafe, right? I'm in the same file, right, that I was in on the phone. I know it's different from the file I've been in all today. But notice I have the $325, meals and entertainment on the Amex, Jenny's Cafe Shop, and the receipt is attached. No, doc attached.